Hello everybody, my name is Eric Wire from Between the Bolter and Me, and I have a pretty exciting unboxing video for you today. I just got a few of these Kingdom Death expansions in the mail, and the first one I wanted to start with, kind of showing everybody, is this Flower Knight. And yeah, so if you're not aware, Kingdom Death Monster is like a collaborative board game in which you'll have a group of 4 survivors fighting a whole host of various kind of berserk-inspired monsters and building a settlement and advancing the civilization and trying to come to terms with all these horrifying monsters and such. And the game was, I guess, released a couple months ago finally via their Kickstarter, and they had a whole host of expansions, upwards to 10 of them, this being one of them, and they finally completed and sent out. And yeah, I just wanted to start to unbox a few of them. And yeah, the first is this one of the smaller ones, the Flower Knight here, and all of them just come in this, like, these sort of cardboard boxes with this kind of sticker on the front. But we'll open this up, but to be honest, I don't really have much of a sense of what's going to be in here other than the model itself, and that they have various like game components, but exactly what all that stuff is, I'm not entirely sure. Okay, let's see here. Well, I have quite a bit of stuff in here. Let's see. So here he is. So the actual game, usually Kingdom Death has a big board and a various like a host of different terrain tiles that you can add to it. And this kind of looks like what these are, some assortment of terrain or some sort. And this actually looks kind of like, sort of like a little, like puzzle pieces that all of these fit together to create kind of this interesting design with these neat sort of skeletons along the side and all these weird hands and such here, which I guess is sort of very much in the styling of Kingdom Death. All this nice illustration and nice color selection. But yeah, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what these sorts of things are even for, other than I suspect they must slot together and it plays some role in actually using them or fighting this Flower Knight itself. But let's see what else we have here. So there's a lot of packing peanuts and such, which I'll try to get some of these out of the way here. But then for the actual other contents, we have here's the actual deck of cards, which this will include this art here. So this is the resource deck. So usually all of the monsters and stuff that you can fight will have these various resources that you will get upon fighting or killing the monster. You'll collect these resources that can be used to craft new material and such. But then also here, this has the monster's AI deck, which is essentially a series of cards that you will draw from each turn, which will kind of dictate how the monster attacks you and such. And this is actually one that shows there are different levels of the monster that you can actually fight, and these numbers here represent like the amount of AI cards that you put together to create his deck, and then it has its various actual stats, like how far it can move and how tough it is, that sort of thing. And this is, every monster itself also has this instinctual behavior. If it can't do, like, it doesn't have any targets or that it can see or something, it'll go back and do this particular thing, which is called germinate. Which, yeah, I don't know, I'm not going to try to read and learn these things here, because a lot of the monsters have pretty unique and different traits and things they do, which, to be honest, is one of the more exciting parts of the game. This sort of mystery inherent behind all of the creatures you're fighting. Then these are actually small, like, gear cards, which essentially these are the sorts of materials and items that you'll be able to craft based on the gear and such here. But let's see here then. we have the Flower Knight themselves, which I'll get to this in a bit. Then here we go. So yeah, they have this nice little rule manual here that I guess just will tell you how to go about fighting and dealing with this. And so there's a pretty neat piece of artwork, which yeah, I suspect, yeah, so in here they have all the rules of sort of the components of this and how you can sort of add this to the core game. It seems that yeah, if you're starting a new campaign with this, so actually the Flower Knights gets added with a story event that happens on your 5th year in the campaign. And then yeah, just all the new rules and such, and just like all the other Kingdom Death stuff, they have a lot of nice artwork, very good color choices and such. But this is actually the story event they suggest that will occur on that year 5. So usually how the game works is as the years go on, there'll be different events that it'll be sort of triggered that you read through, and you'll have to deal with, maybe fight monsters, or it might affect how your settlement is. But to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what exactly is going to happen here, but it looks pretty nice that there's all this color artwork, and it seems that there's actually a fair amount of narrative here, which is pretty exciting. And honestly, that's probably the best part about the Kingdom Death game itself, is the sort of interesting narrative elements, and how, like, just sort of discovering like what sort of weird abilities they will have and why they're assaulting your settlement and that sort of thing. But this here is actually just their standard thing, like telling you how you set up for showdowns with the knight. And that's a creepy looking piece of artwork. Yeah, and so I guess yeah, this is just filled with additional story events and all the various interesting things that can happen, which I guess I'm not going to spend too much time on any of these, because honestly these are the sorts of things that will actually or the most interesting thing about the game, and it's often better to not spend too much time looking at any of this stuff if you have any interest in playing the game, and just have it show up in the actual campaign itself. But yeah, so I'll just set this aside. Yeah, it's just another usage. Oh, so this is actually, I'm not necessarily going to get this out, but these are just little dividers that they give you such that you can, in the actual box game for Kingdom Death, they have various sections for all the different cards and stuff. So this is just a little divider such that you can keep all the Flower Knight cards separate, and likewise for the gear that you will create through the Flower Knight. I guess I can open up some of these things here and show a few of these as well here. Just a second here. Yeah, and so that is also one of the interesting aspects of Kingdom Death itself, that they have all this stuff you can craft and make some of your survivors more interesting. Here's a piece of like equipment that you can get some sort of virus, so I guess that's probably some story related thing. And it seems you can also get the knight's helmet. But I don't know, one of the things that just in general impressed me about Kingdom Death is how all the nice production values of everything, like the nice color choices, the art, and then even the backs of all the cards, again, have this sort of nice design way to separate all the stuff. Like, always looks pretty nice. Seems to be the flower sword that the actual knight has, and a bunch of little like sort of rapiers, foils here, some bows, satchel. Yeah, so usually, as per the game, they'll give you, I think, yeah, usually 3 copies of each of the gear, which I don't know, ultimately is sort of a curious choice, because in the game you're always using 4 survivors, and it would be would have been nice if it just give you 4 of every particular card, but cello. Yeah, but 4 of each would be kind of nice, but I suppose, I don't know, they're already, I think Adam Poots had to spend a lot more money in the development for this game than he had initially anticipated, and even though they made a lot of money from the game, via Kickstarter and such, he still had to pour a lot of additional money into the game to get it completed. So I guess complaining about 1 additional card maybe is a little petty, but still it would have been a bit nice. But yeah, so this is sort of describes the basic action and how the knight works, and then we have a whole host. These are actually fighting arts, which are secret fighting arts, which are things that your characters can actually learn throughout the course of the game, and these are actually, in addition to these sort of fighting arts, here's a host of additional disorders throughout the game. There's a sort of an insanity stat that, depending on certain attacks and things, can affect your sanity, and you might take brain damage, which can result in you developing various disorders. And it's kind of neat that it seems like there are some additional disorders here. Oh, and here is a terrain card, which is, so one of those little tokens was a particular piece of terrain, and this sort of tells you what that'll actually do. Then these are some additional innovations that you can one of the the settlement phase, you can develop various innovations like ammonia and a whole host of things that allows your settlement to do and develop more things, and this, I guess, is just one additional one that they're adding. Here's some tactics, which are different ways the actual enemy can attack, but then now you just have a whole host of these different AI cards, different attacks, and the things that the knight itself will do when you're fighting them. And yeah, so there's a whole bunch of these, and as I mentioned, a lot of it is kind of exciting, just seeing what sort of weird things it'll do, because that's sort of one of the main things that Kingdom Death sort of prides itself on, is how weird and interesting all the things that the monsters can do, and how unnerving a lot of the stuff is. But yeah, so even in a bunch of these sorts of cards, they have some nice little art as well, which just goes back to show you how much time was spent to craft these sorts of expansions, and just, yeah, a lot of nice production values. Okay, and in addition to the AI deck, then there's the hit location deck, which if the survivors cause damage to the monster, they'll draw this hit location card, which will represent where they hit them and their various responses that can happen if you cause a wound or fail to cause a wound. All of these, which add various more interesting situations and things to the fight itself. And here's some other interesting feint card, which, yeah, I'm not entirely sure how these work. Just more things that will, I guess, be explained in that little rule book. And yes, the trap card. Every single hit deck for all the monsters have a trap, which is one of the more frustrating cards and honestly aspects of the whole Kingdom Death fighting system, that you spend all this time struggling to cause damage, and then if you draw one of these particular trap cards, it just cancels all your damage and usually does some horrible thing to your survivors, which I guess that goes back to just it trying to be a difficult game, but it can be frustrating at times. But yeah, some additional cards, which, yeah, I'm not even sure what these are for. But all sorts of stuff. So yeah, I guess this is a card that'll tell tell you to trigger the story event. And yeah, these are the various resources. Huh. Well, that's a freaky looking flower. That is too. Wow. Like an orchid with like a skeleton and the vertebrae there. Huh. Yeah, so they all look really good, really neat, interesting. Kind of excited to put the Flower Knight together and actually just see how our survivors do up against it. But having said that, let me actually get to the knight themselves here and the model, because I feel it's probably what a lot of you are actually wanting to see. And if you've seen the actual resin model on Kingdom Death site, it will be interesting to see how well they've transitioned the model to plastic, which I have no doubt it'll be pretty good. They impressed me quite a lot in the past, how well the Kingdom Death was able to transition their stuff out into plastic. I guess some of the larger models sometimes would have some issues with having pretty large gaps in between them, but nothing too crazy. But yeah, so it comes with a 50mm base, which is kind of one of the standard smaller monster size things, which, to be honest, that is the same base that this Black Knight, which I'm working on assembling, came from, which I actually did an unboxing video a little bit ago. But, and yeah, so here's the actual sprue of the Knight themselves. So you have just the Knight's body here, his crazy vine-coated sword, and here's his nice cape here that has some flowers and such in it. Oh yeah, and here's actually his arm here, which he's actually holding a little flower there, which looks kind of cool. And so yeah, I guess there's only one particular sprue here, but you can see they do have various, just the swords themselves and these arrows, and here's one of these little foils. So the different resources you can get to use to create various equipment from based on the monsters themselves. It's nice to see that they're continuing to give you that sort of equipment to put on your actual survivor models, which I assume here are the actual Flower Knight helmets that you could get. And here's actually that little cello too, which looks pretty nice. I don't know how large it is. I don't have the best sense of scale here. Well, actually, let me see here. So here's a space marine. So it's a pretty large musical instrument, but it has a little base here too, just held up by all these roots and vines. But yeah, it looks very nice. I could actually, oh, here's the bow, a bow too, all the little arrows and such. So yeah, the model looks really nice, and pretty excited to actually try to get it together, because I feel like Kingdom Death, some of my favorite things about the game are the very interesting knight designs. So they're not necessarily as creepy and disturbing as some of the Kingdom Death stuff, but I think they're just neat and cool just how different some of them are, even though they have this just general armor knight look to them. They're all pretty unique and not just working on the same sort of tired stereotypes. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for this particular unboxing. Hopefully soon I'll try to get this together and probably have a post on it on Between the Bolter and Me, so look out for that. And I guess I would just encourage you to keep looking at the blog, subscribe to this YouTube channel to see more unboxing videos, and our podcast, Dragged into Turbo Lasers. But yeah, hope you enjoyed, and be expecting a few more of these Kingdom Death expansion boxing videos as well in the future. Alright, well, thank you, and hope to talk to you soon. Bye.